This is not just a game for kids. It's actually more of a serious hobby and a sport that requires a great deal of discipline. It's hundreds and thousands of throws. You have to throw around 154 knives within a time frame of around 15 minutes. There are clear rules and a set of exercises and techniques that you need to learn and master in order to achieve the desired result. In this episode of the program, our viewers will learn about a very interesting hobby known as knife throwing as a sport. Hello, guys. Hello. What are your names? What are you going to tell us? I am Artem. I am Victoria. I am Maxim. We're knife throwers, and today we're going to tell you how we practice, how we train, why we do it, and why we very much enjoy this form of sport. What myths about knife throwing have developed in society? It is about throwing knives in order to hit small targets from very long distances of more than 20 meters. But the main objective in achieving a record is to strike a large 1 meter wide target. Secondly, knife throwers have the possibility of striking a living target. Another common myth is that there is a knife that always sticks. It's called a mercury knife, and there is a lot of information on the internet in which you can see a thermometer that is called a mercury knife. Who's better at throwing, boys or girls? Girls, of course. There are plenty of girls who win competitions, and their numbers are increasing. But I am just kidding, because both boys and girls are very skilled in throwing knives. Knife throwing is a sport for some and a hobby for others. People go into the woods for recreation and sometimes they throw knives. It is a circus art for some, but there are also people who do knife throwing tricks on stage. We're developing it as a sport in Ukraine, and we have our own sports club. We organize competitions and take part in them. Knife throwing appeared in Ukraine only quite recently. The first club that was formed in Ukraine 3 years ago was called Spadok. But after the events on Maidan, its members went to the ATO and the club fell apart. I was the only one left, so I started organizing a new club. I used to be engaged in fire shows prior to this, and I continue engaging in them to this day. I really like it for the equipment, especially fire rope dart, which originated from the Chinese shengbiao. This is a long rope with a dart or a weight attached to one end. In a fire show, the dart is replaced with a wick that is set on fire. When I became curious about how it appeared in the fire show, I started practicing with a knife. Then I found a person who was also engaged in this intriguing sport, and he came up with the idea of using a shengbiao in fire shows. He told me that he switched to knife throwing from shengbiao. I became interested, so I asked him to tell me about his experience and explain the intricacy of this form of art. I then found the cheapest Chinese-made knives, sold in small kiosks. I bought them, went to the nearest park, found a dead tree and started practicing. It was very calming when I just started. It was some kind of form of relaxation for me. I grabbed those knives and went into the woods. I always had a certain goal. So then I started throwing knives while listening to the birds singing and chirping. It was very therapeutic. Sometimes I would turn my mobile phone off so that nobody would bother me in my time for leisure and relaxation. And the coolest thing was to hear the sound of the knife getting stuck in the tree. So I think that other knife throwers will understand me perfectly well, because they get a great thrill from this natural sound. I started throwing knives when I was a kid, playing various games. Then I remember my father teaching me. Sometime later I met Victoria. I joined the knife throwing club, and I then became more interested in the sport. I really understood how rewarding it is when you throw a knife and it hits the exact target that you aimed at. It gives you the thrill of the throw and fight, and gives you the exciting feeling that you have total control over the process. It has its own aesthetics. I started 5 years ago. It all started with jogging in the morning and the desire to diversify my resting time. When I was recovering my health, I had a desire to throw something like darts. I couldn't bring a bow and arrow while going for a jog, but I could take my first throwing knife set with me, because it was light. I got the idea from the most spectacular and memorable scenes of some movies that made a great impression on me. I wanted to see if it was possible to do the same tricks they pull in films in real life. I get particular satisfaction when I'm distracted from my daily routine.
Это, конечно же, в процессе, когда отвлекаешься от всех рабочих будней.
If you want to learn to throw knives, you can do it yourself, of course. But it will be easier to join a club where people have already been through it, have read textbooks, talked to people, been in different places, and can share this information with you at the first meeting. I started on my own by finding books to read on the internet. But learning from the internet is often difficult, because there is a lot of contradictory information there. And I occasionally stumbled upon articles with poor tips on knife throwing. There are three main techniques for knife throwing. A full spin throw, when a knife does a full spin at 3 meters, 2 full spins at 5, and so on. There's also the half spin throw, usually taught in the army. And there's also the no spin throw, when the knife flies straight at the target. I really like the no spin technique. I was so impressed when I saw it, I wanted to learn to do the same. But I am actively practicing spin throwing right now. I learned the half-spin technique initially, because that's what my father taught me. He learned this technique while serving in the army. Later, when I joined the club, I realized that this technique has quite a lot of advantages, but at the same time it may be less accurate than the full spin technique. So I started practicing this technique. But with time, I realized that accuracy is good, but it depends quite a lot on the distance. Move literally half a step forward or half a step back, and the knife will either underspin or overspin, and it won't hit the target you aimed at. That's the reason why I switched to a no-spin technique. When you use a spin technique, you can usually reliably hit your target after 1 to 3 training sessions. Then your goal is to make the knives stick wherever you want, instead of just anywhere on the target. When I started practicing the no-spin technique, the idea there was to throw the knife stick wherever you wanted and not necessarily to hit the target from 3 meters. When I started throwing knives, generally speaking, it was difficult for me to accurately hit the target even from 3 meters. So I spent several months developing the proper technique for the knife to hit the target.
На данный момент я более заостряю внимание на оборотную технику.
At the moment, I am more focused on the spin technique. It is more accurate. If we compare the results of those who use the spin and no-spin techniques, they're getting roughly the same. All knife throwers in the world are improving, but the spin technique is more accurate, and that's why I prefer it.
Оборотная техника более точная, и поэтому мне она больше нравится.
Actually, there is a lot of information and people write about techniques and grips, but there is not a single one that will work for everyone. Everyone has to choose a technique based on their anthropometric parameters, like swing, speed, and strength. This is all very individual. 80.9% was training alone in a natural environment, which meant that the main goal was to hit the target. It's hundreds and thousands of throws. You make 154 throws in about 15 minutes, which is a lot. For the first half of a year, or even a whole year, my throwing was inaccurate, and I simply could not hit the target.
Очень много бывает ножей для метания, и моделей сейчас
There are a lot of kinds and models of throwing knives. Throwers usually choose their knives when they already know what they want. There's the full spin, no spin and half spin throwing. And then throwers start to realize which knives are better for them after trying all the techniques. It is believed that using different models of knives is a more difficult process. People who are fanatics of the sport grow accustomed to their knives. They can have either two knives or maybe one favorite knife or model in their collection. My first knives were the most basic, which you can find at any kiosk, but we don't recommend them anymore. I bought professional knives when I realized that I wanted a heavier knife, so we started drawing sketches of better knives as we imagined them. I found a smith to make a knife according to my sketch. He made one knife at first, and then I came to order another one, because it suited my requirements. I have a collection of my favorite knives that I use almost all the time when I am practicing. They're called woodpeckers. They're very long knives. I really like them because they are a gift. A throwing knife club presented them to me, and they had them engraved with the name of my club, the blade of the wind, and a logo. The knives are named for me personally. I don't even remember my first knife anymore. I had my first knives when I was a kid. I remember having a green folding knife with a rabbit on it. We used to throw them into the ground. Then I remember throwing my father's knife. It was a heavy diving knife, because he was a scuba diver, and we kept throwing it until we broke it. Then when I joined a club, I bought knives made specifically for this. At first, I asked others at the club to let me try their knives. I tried everything, found those I liked, and then I ordered a set for spin throwing, because I started with this technique. It was only then that I realized that I was more into the no-spin technique, so I ordered a different set more suitable for this technique. I have two sets of knives, and each one has a specific purpose. One set is for spin throwing, while the other one is not for spin throwing. My first set of knives was two tiny 57-gram knives. I bought them in a kiosk. They used to bounce back because they were thin. I didn't really know if that was safe. I was concerned about safety, meaning how to throw them without injuring myself. Later in 2013, I messaged some friends, and they helped me find more experienced people who knew how to engage in this hobby properly. They recommended me several models, one of which I ordered online. I used to practice with just one knife for a long time. Yes, I had to walk back and forth from the target several times, but I had a lot of time to analyze what I did wrong on the way back to the range. I didn't just throw knife after knife and watch if I hit the target. I thought how I could change the grip or stance to make a successful throw. My favorite knives right now weigh more than 300 grams, and they're over 28 centimeters long. They're more stable with my swing, and I like the results. I also like when the knives are symmetrical, don't curve and have bends or slopes on the handle. This knife is called a pedal.
В Украине проводятся, собственно, все клубы.
All clubs in Ukraine hold competitions. There is a club in Odessa that holds competitions. There is a club in Pavlograd that holds competitions. There is a club in Mariupol that holds competitions. And our club in Kyiv also holds competitions. They try to have as many nominations as possible at the competitions so that everyone can participate. Spin and no-spin throwers, X throwers. Of course, I took part in competitions. I took 2 third places last year. I'm training hard and hope that I will take first place in this year's competition. I consider that competition is the next step in development. You train, enter a competition, achieve a good or bad result, and then draw certain conclusions. Participation in competitions gives you an opportunity or an additional motivation to continue practicing further in order to achieve your ultimate goals in life.
После каждого
You draw certain conclusions after each tournament, and that is when you realize where to go from there. It was nice meeting you guys. You too. Bye. We welcome you to join us. It's cool and a lot of fun. It's also beneficial for you.